Good morning, children. Today we'll read the poem Dust of Snow, written by Robert Frost. It's a very short poem and it is divided into two short stanzas. Now let us see something about Robert Frost. Robert Frost was an American poet and he won 4 Pulitzer Prizes also. He depicted the realistic New England life through language and situations familiar to the common man. His famous works include Fire and Ice, Mending Wall, and his 1916 poem, The Road Not Taken, is often read at graduation ceremonies across the United States. Poetry is spontaneous flow of emotions and feelings. So we'll read the poem together. But before we read the poem, I would like you to have a look at some elements that are there in this poem. So here are those elements. Crow, which is a symbol of bad omen. Hemlock tree, which is a poisonous tree with small white flowers. There's another important word here, that is R-U-E-D, rude. Read the situation and try to understand the meaning before we read the poem together. Now let us read the poem. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. A very short poem. Now I would like you all to read the poem silently and feel it. Now, after reading the poem, you all must have come to know that the poet is standing under the hemlock tree, and suddenly from nowhere a crow perches on the tree, and because of that the dust of snow falls down on him. Now this dust of snow, this brings about a change in the mood of the poet. There's a purpose why the poet has used crow and hemlock tree over here. Crow is a symbol of bad omen and hemlock tree is a poisonous tree. The poet wants to give us an impression of grief and distress and sadness through the crow and the hemlock tree. So he was there, a gloomy day he had spent, and suddenly this simple common act of falling down of the snow from the tree brought about a change, a drastic change in his mood, and his heart suddenly felt elated, and he suddenly realized that what he was thinking about the day which had been completely destroyed or ruined or damaged, spent like that only, he had saved some part of it, some part of that day. This act of falling of the dust of snow on him brought about a change in his mood from distress, sorrow and grief to happiness. So just a common, simple, natural act which brought about a change in his mood. That's all about the poem. Now let us see the rhyme scheme of this poem. If you read the last word of each line, you will come to know the rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, A, B. Let me read it for you. Crow, me, snow, tree. So crow and snow, A and A, me and tree, B and B. Similarly, let's read the second para, the last word of the second stanza. Heart, part, mood and rude. So heart and part, A, and mood and rude, B. So that becomes AB, AB. That's the rhyme scheme. I hope all of you must have understood the poem. Now let us move on to the discussion of question answers. The first question is, what is a dust of snow? So the snow that settled down on the hemlock tree, which fell in lumps there on the poet due to the perching of the crow, that is the dust of snow. Next part of the same question is, what does the poet say has changed his mood? The act of falling down of the snow from the hemlock tree, that has changed the mood of the poet. Next part of the same question, how has the poet's mood changed? The poet's mood has changed because of the beautiful act, the tinkling of that snow that fell on him, the coldness, the numbness, that had some beauty in it. And that brought about a change in the mood of the poet. So it has changed from distress, sorrow and grief to happiness and elation. Now let's take the second question. How does Frost present nature in this poem? The following questions may help you think of an answer. Now this question again has got 3 parts in it. Let's take the first part first. And first part is also having subparts in it. So the first part is, what are the birds that are usually named in poems? Usually the birds that are named in poems are cuckoo, nightingale, lark, skylark, etc. Next question. Do you think a crow is mentioned in poems? No, a crow is generally not mentioned in the poems because the poets, they would like to take up the sweet melodies of the birds. They depict that. So it is not that common or not that general to take the name of a crow in the poem. What images come to your mind when you think of a crow? This is another part, subpart of the first question only. So the images that come to our mind are of an ill omen, something which is really bad because it's a crow, shrieky voice, and maybe you have some other images, so you can write that also in the answer. Now let's see the second part of the second question. Again, what is a hemlock tree? A hemlock tree is a poisonous tree with small beautiful flowers, but it is poisonous and it's found there in the cold regions. Next part of the same question, why doesn't the poet write about a more beautiful tree such as maple, oak or pine? So the poet doesn't write about beautiful trees such as maple and oak or a pine because he wants us to feel the grief and the gloominess and the distress that was there in the mind of that person standing under the tree. He wants to give us a gloomy ambience, and that is why he has used hemlock tree instead of any beautiful tree. Now let's see the third part of the second question. What do the crow and hemlock represent, joy or sorrow? Of course, the crow and the hemlock tree represent sorrow here in this poem. What does the dust of snow that the crow shakes off a hemlock tree stand for? The dust of snow that the crow shakes off from the hemlock tree stands for that particular moment. It's a natural common incident, but it stands for that moment that brought about a transition in the mood of the poet. So it's a beautiful act, a common act, but it brought about elation in the heart of the poet. That snow that fell, it was a beautiful act, just a common, simple, natural act, but a beautiful act that brought about the change in the poet's mood. Okay, now let's see the third question. Have there been times when you felt depressed or hopeless? Have you experienced a similar moment that changed your mood that day? So you'll have to write, about any day when you had such a gloomy day, or you were really very sad, and suddenly some incident, just a common simple incident as it happened in the poet's life there, falling of the snow. Similarly, any common incident can happen in your life which brought about a change in your mood. You were sad and suddenly that thing happened, and that gloominess went away and it changed into happiness. So that you're supposed to write in a short paragraph over here.